dinner, and I considered giving this little talk about the health benefits of dates, but I'm not really an expert on the health benefits of dates. I gather there are quite a few, and I'm not an expert on the meaning of Ramadan, which I'm sure many of you know far more about than I do. Of course, I do know that it's a sacred time for the more than 1.5 billion Muslims around the world, and I know that it's a time that serves as a reminder of the duty to serve one another, lift up the less fortunate together for this common cause, which is, that we all, that we actually have, even in our diversity, so much more in common. We all want to promote actually harmony. We want to promote peace. We actually want to promote that collaborative living and tolerance. So that's a little vignette I just thought I would share with you about my my old role, and I just, I'll move swiftly on to my current one, because it did, I could talk about some of those old corruption stories for a long time, but that role is behind me. I'm happy to say I don't deal with police corruption anymore. Which, in fact, what I do deal with in my current job is everything pretty much but the police when it comes to public services. And as I have said to them, that's fine with me. So I'm the Ombudsman. Anybody know what the Ombudsman actually does? Well, it's actually an old Swedish word. Ombudsman, and it means defender of the people. And what the Ombudsman is actually is it's one of those. The concept's been around since about 200 years, but it's been around in our world probably since the 60s and 70s, and it came about because of this recognition of the imbalance of power between the individual and the state. That actually more and more decision making was being done by officials. And we, the poor old hapless citizen, we had less and less power. So the Ombudsman is there to provide a bit of a balancing act between the individual and the state. So I deal with complaints about state and local government. I get about 40,000 of them a year, not necessarily about things I can do anything about, because people complain to my office about everything, including their pizza toppings and their cold chips. I send them off somewhere else. But I deal with over 1,000 public bodies, including government departments, including organisations like VicRoads and WorkSafe, and universities, by the way. And I have the powers of a Royal Commission to deal with investigations, which is really important. It's important to have powers in this job. As you've heard, I've got a 10-year term, and 10 years, as I like to remind members of Parliament, is 2.5 times the term of a government. So that's an important, they've got to get used to me, because as the Ombudsman with Royal Commission powers, very often you make decisions that governments don't like. So it's important that you actually have that security of tenure that allows you to make those unpopular decisions that are necessary when you're the defender of the people. So I deal, as I said, with over close to 40,000 complaints a year, and those complaints are about as diverse as the people who bring them. And the point here is that regardless of race, religion, cultural background, sexuality, whether you live in rural or regional or metropolitan Victoria, the Ombudsman is here for all Victorians. And that is a really important point that I want to make. So, just an example of a few of the cases that we deal with, and diversity is recognised in our Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. Is anybody familiar with the Charter? It's something that we have in Victoria that actually other states don't have, and this is a charter that protects actually, including our rights of recognition and equality, and that's Section 8, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, and belief and cultural rights. So your cultural rights are actually protected under the Charter, and you can complain to the Ombudsman if you think your rights are being breached, among other things. So just a few examples, very short examples of the sorts of cultural complaints that I get, because normally they're about prisons and quite a few other things. But we had a complaint about a local council who was dealing with a Chinese ratepayer, and this person had asked for a letter from the council in Mandarin, which the council refused to provide. So they complained to my office, and we made inquiries with the council. You need to how about communicating with a ratepayer, and the result of those inquiries was the council agreed to provide the information in Chinese. We get a lot of complaints about cultural rights from prisoners, from Muslim and Jewish prisoners, indeed, about access to halal or kosher food, the people's ability to observe Ramadan, access to prayer rooms, the kind of thing where people complain about their cultural rights. And the common thread to all of these is this sense that it's not fair. You know, why do you complain to the Ombudsman? Because something is not fair. So I don't just deal with individual complaints, although I get lots of them. You know, what I can also do is put quite a few of them together or come up with an issue that is about fairness. And my most recent report on fairness, which some of you have read and probably many of you have been affected by, is into our system of Mikey fair enforcement. Anybody read that report? You're familiar with our Mikey system of fair enforcement. This is the system where if you've got if you don't have a valid card and you're travelling on the tram or the bus, and you're stopped by authorised officers, they say you can pay a penalty fare of $75. Now, I won't take your details, or we'll take your name and we'll put you down for infringement of $223. What would you like to do? Immediately. So, you know, so we get a lot of complaints about that. That's not fair. And so I did an investigation into our enforcement system, and guess what? I concluded that it was not fair. The fair system was not fair. And the reason for that is that it doesn't actually target the repeat offenders, the sorts of people who actually account for the vast majority of fare evasion in the state. And what it does do is put out this drift net that picks up students who've forgotten their concession cards, homeless people who then get caught up in this net through the court system, you know, poor tourists from interstate or overseas who haven't a clue how the system works. And, you know, they all get dumped on by authorised officers who should actually use a bit more discretion. So I'm happy to report that because Ombudsman reports do get very good take-up on recommendations, that the recommendations were accepted in that report. The penalty fare system is being abolished as of next January, and authorised officers are being taught to use discretion better. So that's good. So that's just an example. So investigations, you know, they're a big part of my job, but that's not all I do. I mean, it is actually important as well that I get the message out to all Victorians that my office is available to deal with them. So what I've begun doing in the last 2 years that I've been in the job is getting out across Victoria, getting out to Mildura and Swan Hill and Warrnambool and Bairnsdale and Bendigo and elsewhere to make the point that I'm not just the Ombudsman for Melbourne. And that also is a message to other communities, to communities of disadvantage or refugee communities or people within Victoria who are less exposed to the sorts of services that I might be able to provide. Because it's very well known in my business that the people who need the services of the office, the people who are most affected by this imbalance of power, are actually the ones who know about it the least, you know, so they're the ones who are the hardest to get to. So we're doing quite a bit of work trying to reach out to those disadvantaged communities. So that's a very quick canter through what the office does, and here we are, you know, we're a pretty diverse group, I think, looking around the room, I think diverse group of many faiths. I can see representatives of many faiths as I look around, but actually we're brought here tonight for a common purpose. You know, we're brought here to share in the Muslim tradition of the Iftar, and I also hope that we're here because we have a common belief in justice. And I would like to think that the justice journey was not just my journey at Monash, that it's a journey that students at Monash all still do, that people associated with the university still do, and that people associated with the Muslim tradition will also feel strongly about. So I hope I've given you a sense of my own justice journey, and I wish you strength and courage in yours. So my thanks to the Intercultural Society. Evenings like this, I think, are incredibly important in bringing people together, and bringing non-Muslims together to experience the traditions of Islam and the experience of Iftar, I think is a fantastic initiative, and I congratulate the AIS on doing this. Thank you for sharing your food and your traditions with us, and I wish you Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem, and Kulam wa enta bikhair.
Thank you, Deborah, for that insightful speech and also sharing with us information about the crucial role of an ombudsman in our society. I would request you to please be on the stage again, and I would also like to request Mr. Emmett Keskin, Executive Director of the Australian Intercultural Society, to present you with a gift of thanks.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, your challenges and your successes, and wish you well in your job. You remain in these as the Ombudsman. Thank you.